Elon's alarming plan to protect Starlink. Imagine glancing upward and glimpsing a glistening web of satellites, shimmering silently amongst familiar constellations. These space-based sentinels enable modern connectivity and convenience with their technology, yet they could also turn watchful sights back on Earth, were tensions between rival nations ever to erupt in the heavens. That chilling possibility inches closer as global militaries investigate securing the ultimate orbital high ground, an ethereal realm once solely synonymous with exploration, and unity now increasingly at risk of becoming heavily armed, a realm harboring the first weapons capable of unleashing havoc at lightspeed. To comprehend how near-Earth space graduated from sanctuary to potential Star Wars battlefront, we must rewind to the thrilling early space age, when satellites debuted solely as peaceable envoys, extending scientific communion across terrestrial divides. The Soviet Union stunned the world in 1957 by launching humanity's first artificial moon, Sputnik 1. This diminutive orb with trailing antennae immediately captivated global consciousness, while transmitting regular radio pulses even detectable by amateurs worldwide using shortwave receivers. More than showcasing technological prowess, it sparked a dawning realization that accessing space could profoundly reconnect people through shared moments of wonder, inspiration, and scientific spirit. The dream of an orbital utopia free from earthly conflicts and constraints briefly shimmered. As attainable to optimists then, President Eisenhower even proposed in 1958 that satellites and nuclear technology be placed under impartial international oversight for the collective security. He presciently insisted that by working cooperatively rather than competitively in space, trust and eventual peace back on Earth would organically emerge between rivals over time. But simmering ideological standoffs and proxy wars inevitably migrated skyward too, as humanity gained increasing orbital competence through the early 1960s. Within 2 years of Sputnik, the US orbited intelligent satellite discoverer, WA, under cover of an ostensible science mission, but secretly intended to reconnoiter rival landmasses and develop means for disabling or destroying opponent satellites if needed. Any lingering illusion of space solely as a non-provocative high frontier quickly evaporated. By 1962, escalating capability boasts culminated with both superpowers brazenly detonating nuclear explosives in space, just to demonstrate dominance and ability to annihilate each other's orbital assets at will. The Starfish prime test in July, with a 1.4 megaton blast 250 miles above Pacific, proved especially frightening in hindsight. The explosion's artificial radiation belt catastrophically disrupted electrical systems and communications across the Hawaiian Islands 900 miles away, engulfing Honolulu in emergency chaos for weeks. An ominous outcome puncturing optimistic 60s visions of a stellar future, just as Apollo moon missions geared up. Fortunately, the Outer Space Treaty signed in 1967 helped forestall unrestrained weapons proliferation in orbit by explicitly banning mass destruction systems and overt military testing in space. This first arms control pact, brokered from early space rivalries, preserved the heavens as a realm legally free for exploration or commercial development by any nation, regardless of terrestrial power or ideology. The ensuing decade witnessed superpower cooperation rather than competition, as inspired Apollo-era astronauts stepped stages closer to the moon's surface each year, or at least so the world hoped, as Apollo-era idealism peaked before fading. But fast forward across 6 decades to today, and near-Earth space bristles anew with possibility, both wondrous and alarming, as high-tech unmanned satellites now interweave irreplaceably into global connectivity, finance, early missile warning, weather prediction, and more. Civilian and military spheres intricately meld in orbit. And disturbingly, 1969's Outer Space Treaty lacks any verification provisions for judging compliance, leaving the door cracked open for those contemplating space weaponization today. As multiple nations' space budgets climb, next-generation multi-purpose technology touting unnerving dual-use potential now accelerates development behind classified veils under the guise of missile defense or anti-satellite programs. Diplomatic events like Russia's reckless anti-satellite kill test last year, involving obliterating an old spacecraft at missile speed in orbit, highlight risks of spiraling space weaponization. The explode and scatter debris strategy recklessly showcased capability to annihilate crucial low-Earth satellites, providing internet to billions daily, with Russia now largely isolated politically on Earth. Analysts worry weaponization may migrate heavenward as Russian rulers seek new arenas to demonstrate global power and prowess. Currently, China also stands accused of aggressively expanding its own anti-satellite programs, reportedly including orbital inspector robots, directed energy systems, and co-orbital satellite hunter-killer drones using claws or nets to permanently disable rival assets without self-generating hazardous missile debris clouds accessible to all. China's mysterious prototype, Force Gun, touting ability to manipulate objects at vast distances using magnetized plasma, could have equally sinister dual-use potential depending on national intentions. Meanwhile, the Pentagon reveals plans to test prototype orbital particle beam weapons possibly as early as next year, under the official banner of exploring next-generation missile defense. Yet the demonstrated capability to almost instantly strike any terrestrial target by surprise from space on command would likely accelerate global conflict escalation fears rather than foster collective security. And perhaps most ominously, numerous intelligence reports suggest China strives to specifically develop means to comprehensively disable critical portions of SpaceX's vast Starlink satellite communications constellation network on order, having proven invaluable for recent battlefield situational awareness and drone control thanks to hardy resiliency and redundancy. Analysts report China views Starlink's strategic potential as threatening long-term to disrupt wide swaths of SpaceX's vast low-altitude web undetected, likely requires either high-powered microwave emitters selectively targeting key nodes or obtaining network traffic access for coordinated hacking. Technology China now brazenly boasts of having miniaturized for potent effect, despite desire to keep actual disabling programs secret. Of course, Russia, India and other space stakeholders now also race to launch their own global low-altitude satellite internet and observation constellations to sway strategic norms. Within years, perhaps 100,000 spacecraft or more could sail in city-like grids overhead, each machine potentially vital to modern civilian life or battlefield supremacy through GPS, telecommunications, missile warning or weather prediction data, with civil and military spheres inextricably intertwined aloft. The drive to technologically harden essential orbital assets against interference, whether physical or electronic, seems inevitable. Billionaires too have pivotal roles to play amidst these mounting celestial tensions simmering beyond most people's day-to-day awareness. Jeff Bezos wisely advocates for voluntary unified technical and debris hazard standards, preventing individual satellites from operational interference that could set off chain reactions fatally crippling entire orbital networks. Yet realistically, profit-seeking space corporations may inevitably feel financial or policy pressures to technologically shield proprietary orbital assets should overt or covert warfare inexorably erupt there one day. Resilience and infrastructure redundancy, rather than eye-for-an-eye retaliation, may prove vital for commercial space companies attempting to responsibly defend sovereign orbital holdings without escalating celestial standoffs. Clearly, the window for proactive diplomacy narrows as sophisticated space weapons inch from theoretical to operational at a quickening pace, mostly obscured from public discourse. Here stand all nations at a decisive historical inflection point. Either allow terrestrial power struggles to insidiously expand skyward by spilled blood, or ink fresh agreements upholding near-Earth space as protected global commons. The burgeoning scale of shared interest in maintaining workable orbital peace moving forward can hardly be overstated, because global communications, commerce, crops and more tangibly rely on fragile electronic links through putting the troposphere daily. So leaders face a stark choice: preserve near-Earth space as free sanctuary for cooperative inspiration, or inexorably allow the heavens morph into heavily armed high ground guarded by missiles and lasers, a realm insulated from worldly affairs for all prior human history, now risks becoming the chief powder keg of the 21st century by technical arrogance, or indifference to starfaring generations yet unborn. Yes, the Outer Space Treaty affirms space as a mutual province and driver for all humankind, regardless of terrestrial power or alliances. Orbital demilitarization positively impacts every nation's future. Flexibility for space exploration according to scientists' consensus, shareholders of world destiny who look with concern on binding the unknown, with humanity's past frailties rather than possibilities. But obsolete 20th century pacts urgently cry modernization to match pace of technology, lest ignorance and tribalistic sentiments seed celestial conflict. Global standards for averting hazardous escalatory arms races overhead offer a path for sustained harmony on lands below. Shining silver linings exist if world leaders so choose at this pregnant crossroads. Because human experience confirms that when gazing back on borderless Earth from hundreds of miles overhead, terrestrial political divides tend to dissipate as all crew unite tightly around common survival goals. That profound perspective shift wrought by physical separation from native soils proves critical knowledge for new generations whose lives orbit around satellites. Staring down on Earth from low orbit intuitively recasts our planet as a singular shimmering oasis in a vast void, deserving protection by all peoples clinging to its fragile skin. If celestially versed, shall not future leaders more prudently avoid senseless warfare over arbitrary lines scratched on lands below? And could simulations conveying gut awareness of gazing back on unified humanity and geosphere from outside become routine parts of diplomatic training or even school curricula worldwide? Studies suggest possibly so if policies value wisdom over wealth. We still hold hope that as satellites proliferate overhead, the brighter light sparked within explorers may illuminate pathways Beyond brute tribal competition or domination amongst the stars, there lies a choice path forward if prudent. The heavens remain pristinely untouched by human conflict thus far, but not guaranteed eternally so. Yet by gazing thoughtfully upward with hopeful yet appropriately vigilant eyes, mutual understanding may guide all explorers spacefaring together in this new space age. For stars patiently await behind every skyward glance for those discerning hearts and minds, their hidden wholeness revealed through hard-won wisdom. Until we speak again, my friends, about our stellar futures and fates intertwined.